drawing ever closer to a release date for Miraculous Stellar Force, November 1st. I'm actually really excited for the special, to tell you the truth. I've already enjoyed the promotional materials we've seen so far, and I'm really interested to see what they come up with. The different art style and the setting is probably the big draw for me in that regard, and I'm also super excited to see how they follow up on the story in the form of the show. However, that being said, I am a little worried about how distant the show seems to be from the special. I mean, this is coming out in November 2025, but all of the information I'm seeing about the show is that it's going to come out in 2027, which is a fairly long time away. I know that scheduling is always a thing that can take a while, and that animation can be time consuming. I'm not trying to be entitled or unreasonable or anything like that. I just wonder if they could have perhaps planned this a little bit better. The reality is that the big draw for the casual audience of this special is not simply that title of Miraculous, but also the fact that it's going to be starring Marinette. To a lesser extent, Kagami can be included there, but I think Ladybug's the big draw. I also think the anime style could potentially attract different fans that might not be interested in the mainline show, but that remains to be seen. Regardless, there's a good chance that they're going to be coming in hot in regards to the show, and it could get a fair bit of traction. However, that being said, when it comes time for Stellar Force to release, a lot of those casual-friendly elements, the Miraculouses, Marinette, and Kagami, they're going to be stripped away, and you're left solely with these Tokyo-based heroes. This in turn has me wondering what's next. Will they be able to convert that main audience to this spin-off show? Logic would dictate that some are going to take the plunge, but some people are not going to bother. That's just generally the nature of spin-off media. It's rarely as popular or consumed as widely as the original content. So in order to maximize the potential and maintain significant momentum going forward into the release, you kind of expect they're going to follow up on it relatively soon. The turnover should only be a couple of months if you still want people to care about these characters, especially since it doesn't seem likely they're going to be introducing any major Miraculous characters in the show itself. This special's supposed to be the ease-in point to get to know the newbies while still maintaining a bit of normalcy within the franchise, but I think they're going to lose so much momentum with such a large gap. It just feels like some pretty poor planning if you ask me. I mean, there's every chance the show comes out faster than that and they don't have a gap of well over a year, but there's also every chance the opposite's true as well, and it gets blasted with heavy delays. After all, anything can happen in the world of show business. Let's just hope for the former rather than the latter, because it's just very frustrating overall, isn't it? It also makes me wonder when Season 6 is actually going to wrap up, because I'd be shocked if they wanted to go a very long time with no content at all within the franchise. Do we think there might be another couple-month hiatus on the horizon for the mainline show to slowly creep us towards 2027 so the break's not very significant at all? I guess it remains to be seen. Like I said, I have rather enjoyed a lot of the previous posters and trailers that have been put out recently, and I think just the other day another one dropped, so I figured I'd take a look through it and see what we can find to discuss. Okay, so first up, I do want to note that a whole lot of what we're seeing across these trailers is very Kagami heavy. From what I can see, it seems that Ladybug's going to be in the special because, of course she is. She's considered the lead character of the franchise, and so she's not just gonna not appear. I can already hear a couple of Cat Noir truthers out there in the comments talking about how Cat Noir's an equal protagonist and he should be in the special too, but that's not what we're talking about today. We'll touch on that next time. However, it does seem like the principal character going off these trailers and whatnot at the very least is going to be Kagami. It's going to be her story that's being told, or at least that's what we're seeing in these trailers. And obviously her story will draw in a bunch of these extra characters we see in the trailer and the poster, or at the very least is going to draw in a couple of the most important ones, because I think based on the number of characters we see here, there is not enough time to adequately explore each and every one of them in much depth across the course of a 50-minute special. I mean, we're 6 seasons into the mainline show, and we're still in the midst of fleshing out the majority of the tertiary characters after numerous seasons of only focusing on select few. I'm not sure there's going to be a whole lot of time for anybody else, which means that when it comes time to depart, there's a good chance there's going to be a big gaping hole in the narrative where Kagami used to be. Now, of course, we're only getting the tiniest snippets of the narrative here, but it seems like from what we've gathered, that a lot of the character arcs are centered around the dynamic with Kagami specifically. We know she has that ex-boyfriend here, and I suspect there's going to be some sort of intense rivalry going down with the blonde girl too. I suspect the only real character development we're going to see are going to be the 3 featured leads from the poster, so that's 2 already inherently tied in with Kagami, and the other is largely MIA in these trailers. I mean, there still is a lot to be seen though, and I could be wrong with all of this. I'm not really certain. But of course, this brings us to our first look at the trailer. We start off the trailer with a Japanese-inspired rendition of the Miraculous theme, which actually sounded really good, not gonna lie. I'm not gonna pretend to be hugely in tune with Japanese culture overall, but they seemingly use some traditional instruments, or at least some sound-alikes when making the variant, and of course the actual song itself is an eternal banger. I don't think it can be understated just how important an opening theme tune can be to the memorability of a franchise, and Miraculous has always had that on lock. I mean, I know that occasionally I don't mind belting out the theme as I'm going about my day. Surely I can't be the only person who does this, or sings along with the tune as the episode begins, or plays the version from the movie on repeat to the point that you've surely given it thousands of views by yourself. Is that just me? We then have a look at what I presume is supposed to be an older woman who knows Kagami. She also has pink hair, even with dyed eyebrows, which is certainly a commitment. Judging by what she's saying, she's probably some sort of family employee or a caretaker. I mean, I doubt they sold off all their property when they moved to Paris after all. This person's probably going to be looking after her and Marinette whilst they're in Tokyo, as I doubt that Tomoe's going to be making the trip, and she doesn't really seem all that maternal anyway. However, there was a key thing that she did mention here, and that is the fact that Kagami had a whole bunch of friends and even a boyfriend before she moved from Tokyo to Paris. This kind of had me a little bit surprised because I'm pretty sure in those early seasons back when Kagami and Marinette were first starting to bond and become friends, the heavy implication, if not outright being stated, was that she never had any of this sort of thing before. I guess they're just throwing all of that out of the window then? It's a little bit strange, but at the same time, it's clearly there to serve the story. After all, I doubt that Kagami would be a very interesting character to be following if she had zero connection to any of these new characters. So in that way, it's probably a bit of a necessary change and can be treated as a bit of a soft retcon in that she may have had friends back in Tokyo, but maybe Marinette was her first true friend in France. I think that way it maintains the vibe of her feeling awkward and not knowing how to interact with others, while still being able to gel with this new backstory that's been added. We then have a look at this former boyfriend of hers, Kazuno, who's the little dude with dark hair and the green eyes. Green eyes, you say? Well, it certainly seems as if she has a type, doesn't it? I do wonder what his personality is going to be like. I think traditional logic would dictate that he's somewhat similar to either Adrian or Felix, so the writers can well and truly hone in on the idea of her having that type. For me though, I think it would actually be far funnier and more fitting for him to have a personality and demeanor that's more similar to Marinette than anybody else. I think it would further tie in with that idea of Marinette being her first true friend in Paris, but I also just think it would be kind of funny for that to be the case. Anyway, I do wonder how they're going to approach this whole ex-boyfriend thing. They seem to be on good terms here as he's all smiley with her whilst they're in the arcade, and they're off on their own when the fireworks are happening later on. I thought at first maybe these would be flashbacks to when they were dating, but then I saw Marinette in the background with some of the other members of Stellar Force's team, so I nixed that idea. I do have to say that I'm also really enjoying the animation here. I really hope it looks this good beyond just the special. I really like it. We then hear Marinette ask Kagami which one is Kazuno when they're looking at the big group photo, so obviously that is going to be the boyfriend then. I have to say that looking at the group in this context, I really like all of their designs, at least when they're in the civilian identities. I did laugh though, in that they're all in fairly standard, if a bit stylized outfits. Some of it's a bit out there, but it's nothing you haven't really seen before. And then there's just this girl in blue who casually has this enormous zipper that is completely ridiculous and unnecessarily big. I mean, how heavy would that be hanging off you, you know? I just can't imagine why she'd be wearing this. So deeply impractical. I'm actually rather mind-boggled. Moving on, is it just me or are these characters all sort of bizarro world versions of the Miraculous? I mean, some look far more different than others, but if you look long enough, you can start to piece together a lot of similarities, or see how they've combined multiple characters together. I don't know, maybe I'm just looking for connections where none exist. We then get a brief interaction between Kagami and her old friends. Somebody calls out her name and she turns to be confronted with all of them, doing every single anime pose under the sun. There are a billion variants of the slightly side-on with hand-on-hip pose. We have the cool guy arms crossed pose, the tall gentle giant standing perfectly straight and face-on pose, the shy girl hands clasped in front pose, and of course my favourite of all, the utterly unrealistic, never really seen in real life, hey! Get a load of my armpits pose. This is probably one of my all-time favorites, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's something you will pretty much never see in real life outside of stretching or laying down, and yet I swear it happens in pretty much every single anime I've ever seen. Unless, of course, I am the anomaly, and a lot of people actually do pose like this in a normal setting to showcase how casual and relaxed they are. Bit weird if true. Obviously, things are not always going to go swimmingly for Kagami in this special. We have a clip of her and Marinette laying in bed, and Kagami's curled up and looks upset as if she might be crying. Meanwhile, Marinette's laying, staring up at the ceiling with a fairly melancholy look on her face. She says that Kagami asked her to come there to help her friends, but she won't be able to do that unless she can understand what's actually going on. So I suspect there's been some sort of falling out or argument that's happened here between Kagami and a member or members of Stellar Force, and that there's history here that Marinette doesn't quite understand or Kagami's not forthcoming with. We then see a clip that I suspect might be a flashback. Kagami sitting alone on a bench looking a bit lonely, a bit forlorn, and Kazuno and Blondie see him. The blonde girl gets a bit of a devious look on her face, so I wonder what follows here. Will it be her actually being nice and deciding that she's going to adopt Kagami as her friend? Or is she going to approach her to make fun of her and tease her a bit? Either way, I think that Kazuno ends up drawn to her, and that's how the relationship begins. We then see a bunch of kaiju getting absolutely stomped and tossed away by a tornado, and I think I also heard some screaming in there. Considering it then cuts to Kagami transformed into Ryuko and some of her friends staring at her slack-jawed, I would expect that this means that she's the one who fights them at first. She's also telling somebody to promise not to tell anybody, and I think this is probably going to be her simply telling her friends to hush up about her having a Miraculous and not to tell anybody about it. This does make me wonder though, how's the whole Stellar Force thing going to be revealed? It seems that Kagami already knows that they're heroes ahead of time. Was she also one of them once upon a time? I would have thought that they get empowered during the special, but the opening of her bringing Marinette doesn't work if that's the case. I'm very intrigued, and I'm super excited to see it released, to tell you the truth. This was honestly a really good trailer, and that's really all there is to it. It raised a bunch of questions, answered almost none, but that's okay. I kind of like that I'm flying blind for this and can enjoy it in full when it comes out. With all that being said though, in the end those have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the Stellar Force latest trailer? Are you hyped for that Tokyo special? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment and subscribe and let me know.